Let's go to some really critical stuff, Mark. And hydrogen, two dreadful energy bills in the New South Wales Parliament earlier this month, waved through by the Liberals, the Nationals, Labor and the Greens. You were the only speaker in opposition. A $3 billion subsidy, this is rent-seeking, for hydrogen production. Are we back with the rent seekers, those who lobby governments for money or subsidies? Here's a proposed $3 billion in New South Wales, $21 billion in Canberra, and as you say, an emerging industry. Well, why can't Andrew Forrest fund this from his own resources?
That's a very good question, of course. There's not much of an emerging industry if the nation's wealthiest man can't fund it from his own profitability. But, Alan, it's a rent seeker's picnic. I mean, anyone who's got a good nose for free money is in there like a rat up a drainpipe at the moment, both in Macquarie Street and in Canberra, all on the basis of the promise of a technological miracle through hydrogen. Now, hydrogen's been talked about for 40 years. Joh Bjelke-Petersen used to talk about it in Queensland. That's how far this idea goes back. But it's a very inefficient way of creating a new gas because it's using energy to create energy.
To split,
just take steel making, for example.
To split hydrogen from oxygen is inefficient and uses a lot of energy.
Yeah, well, you've just got a picture there of what looked like a steel making plant. To make what they call green steel using hydrogen, you need to use 15 times as much electricity as normal steel. 15 times as much electricity as normal steel. So that just shows you how inefficient it is. To move a hydrogen car from when you start with the electricity to make the original batch of hydrogen, you lose 75% of the energy to the point where the car actually moves. So these technologies
but also,
inherently
Mark,
are expensive.
And it's highly flammable. I mean, it'd be dangerous on our roads. But, I mean, when Keane says the plant, I mean, this is unbelievable. This could attract between $80 billion and $200 billion worth of investment in New South Wales. Where does he get these figures from? Where is the modelling? And he can't even do his maths. He said there'll be 10,000 jobs from a $3 billion spend. So what's that, $300,000 per job? Taxpayers' money?
Yeah, $300,000 worth of public money. You might as well give the money to the workers. They'd invested a lot better than Matt Keane in their future, of course. Where does he get the figures from? The modelling isn't released. He's the most secretive politician we've seen in New South Wales. And there's a footnote in the document. Some of the figures are taken from the Department of Industry in Japan. So that doesn't give you a lot of confidence that we know what we're doing in New South Wales. But just on that other figure you mentioned, Alan, $270 billion worth of private investment, creating 10,000 jobs. That's one job for $27 million worth of private investment. So these figures just show this is a capital-intensive industry. This has got to be the least efficient way of creating jobs in the history of economics. Every one job corresponds, you need $27 million to create just one job in this hydrogen industry. Well, you know, it's certainly not going to do anything to bring down unemployment, is it?
Taxpayers' money. It's taxpayers' money. Now, what about the lunatics who called hydrogen a natural gas? Don't they know that it's got to be... What?
They tell us to follow the science, but they actually, against the votes of One Nation and the Shooters Party, they redefined in the New South Wales Parliament that hydrogen, we're totally man-made. There's no natural hydrogen. You've got to go to Jupiter to find that. This is a man-made resource using electricity to split the hydrogen away from the oxygen in water. They've redefined this as a natural gas, which is a complete fiction, an absolute fiction. They've got the hide to tell us to follow the science, and they're rewriting the high school science book.
Well, what about just before you go, nearly $500 million for the purchase of electric vehicles? And you've asked sensibly, why do taxpayers in Penrith, Blacktown, Wollongong, Muswellbrook need to subsidise cars they can't afford for millionaires who can't afford them?
Well, you know, Alan, who can afford a $78,000 car? Not many battlers in the western suburbs of Sydney or in country New South Wales in regional areas. This is another subsidy for the rich, proving that when they talk about new technology, clean energy technology, it's only for the rich. It's inherently expensive and inefficient. And what's more, who would buy one of these electric vehicles? You've got all the inconvenience of having to stop and recharge the things, which is not suited to the big distances we travel in Australia. But, Alan, through the Parliament, they also passed the capacity of government to track these vehicles using satellite technology to eventually collect the motorist user charge. So who would buy a vehicle when government, Big Brother, is tracking your movements? And at one stage, they're going to hand this material over to other government agencies. So I just would have thought in terms of basic privacy. You know, we all thought the car was the last bastion of privacy, where it's our car, we know where we're going, no one else necessarily knows. Forget about it with the electric vehicle. Government is tracking you.
They'll satellite track you. One quick one before you go. In all of this, where were the Labor Party?
Well, the Labor Party was voting for it. Labor worships at the altar of climate change. They talk about the impact of tolls in Western Sydney, but they stumped up and voted for $3.5 billion worth of subsidies for the rich, for people like Twiggy Forrest for hydrogen and for people who can afford $78,000 cars. So when Chris Minns says he's got some concern for the battlers in Western Sydney, why didn't he say reallocate the $3.5 billion for toll relief and public transport in Western Sydney? What a complete and utter fraud.
Good on you. Great stuff, Mark. Well, good to talk to you. How good is he? How good is he? Thank you for all you do, Mark Latham. He's astonishing, isn't he?